Good afternoon and welcome to Will on Safety. Today we're going to discuss 10 sort of key qualities that I think every health and safety practitioner should have. So let's start off then with quality number one. Good health and safety practitioners should be able to identify hidden hazards. Okay, there's a number of different ways you can do this. The number one key way of identifying hazards are just listen to the workforce, listen to your employees, have those health and safety conversations with people. Listening to employees is one of the most underutilised ways of identifying hazards. Effectively, those employees are your subject matter experts, whether that be if they're using a lathe, if they're on a certain process or using a certain piece of workplace equipment, they will be able to tell you all of the issues that isn't in the manufacturer's handbook, issues that may be caused due to positioning of the work equipment, may be caused due to sort of lack of guarding that hasn't really been thought about. So they are a fundamental source of information when identifying hidden hazards. Another way to do it is investigate all accidents. Obviously, accident investigation is key, and finding root causes for accidents is the fundamental purpose of investigating those accidents. But it'll also point you to any immediate causes. Things like guarding missing, things like being able to get your hands, fingers, etc. into places in machines where they shouldn't be. There's a whole host of different hazards we can identify through a very good and robust accident investigation. Thirdly is health and safety and workplace walk rounds. So generally, a good health and safety practitioner should spend most of their time, on the shop floor, interacting with, management, interacting with shop floor personnel. If you're doing that, you're on the shop floor all the time. You can identify hazards as and when you sort of come along them. Also, having that that interaction with employees, they're also going to identify any issues that they're having. So that's a really good way. 3 really good ways of identifying hidden hazards. The next thing I want to talk about, so number 2, if you like, is verbal hazard communication. All right, so when we identify these hazards and when we start thinking about putting control measures in place, we normally do that a number of different ways, but there has to be a verbal hazard communication as well. So, for example, say you're working on a construction site, maybe we have to have some crane operations going on. That's obviously going to be a hazard to the whole workforce. So what we need to do is verbalise that, let people know that there is a hazard that's going to be in and around their work area. When we think about verbal hazard communication, it needs to be at a level as well that everybody can understand. So we need to think about, who are we briefing this to? Is it shop floor employees? Is it the management? Is it a mixture of both? And we need to level that conversation at who the audience is. Again, this is something that I think we as safety professionals sometimes can get a bit wrong. We'll either, when we're verbalising hazards, we'll either do it at too high a level or maybe too low a level where senior managers might get a bit disinterested as well. So it's important that we find the right level for that verbalisation and make sure everybody understands what the hazard is, what we expect from them to keep themselves safe from that hazard. Next is visual hazard communication. So this is number 3. What do we mean by visual hazard communication then? Well, if you think about when we're walking about a site, you'll see a number of health and safety signs. You might see things like hazard warning tape. you know, especially on things like low ceilings or you know, rooms with very, very low ceilings and things like that. We want to let people know that there's a hazard there. Good sort of visual hazard communication will be fairly sparse, and it'll be targeted at those areas where, you know, the hazards are real. We need to think about, you know, we're not just putting hazard warning tape and signage up everywhere. If we do that, it'll have a detrimental effect. So people will just go, oh, everything's a hazard, and not really pay attention to it. The key with visual hazard communication is identifying those areas which are problem areas, if you like, and making sure that they stand out from the rest of the facility. You know, maybe it's a blind corner where there's potential for forklift trucks and pedestrians to interact. Obviously, that's an issue if we have no signage or if we have no visual communication there that there's a potential hazard. But in the same regard, you know, if it's the same sort of visualizations as everywhere else on the site, it's not going to be, it's not going to stand out as much as it should. So that's a very, very delicate balance. The key thing with that is to identify those areas where the real hazard exists and make sure we have good visual hazard identification in that area or those areas. Number 4 then is convincing presentations. So you'll do presentations as a health and safety professional for a number of different reasons. It can be training, it can be building business cases to get you know, health and safety control measures that might require investment through. You know, it can be presentations to the board of directors, for example. It's really, really important that those presentations are convincing, and it comes back a little bit to the verbal sort of communication piece. You need to think about the audience we're presenting to. So again, if we're presenting to the board of directors, we don't want to make it too lower level that they're going to get disinterested. In the same regard, you know, if we're presenting to the shop floor about potential, you know, safety improvements or, you know, having those safety conversations, you know, we don't want to present it at too high a level where the shop floor think it's nothing to do with us, this is all financial and how we're getting on safety wise. It doesn't affect me on my day to day. So it's really important before we do any presentations, we need to make them convincing for the audience we're presenting to. That might mean, you know, if you have the same subject but you're presenting it to the management or to the shop floor, you might have 2 slightly different presentations. The wording might be slightly changed. Some of the impactful statements and impactful information also might have to change to grab the attention of that key audience member. So it's really important, you know, we have to have convincing presentations, especially if we're trying to get finance for a health and safety project, for example. Health and safety is one of those things where being able to sell it to the management in terms of, you know, what is the payback, what am I going to see from spending this outlay, is very, very difficult to do. Because if that key control measure, if that investment is working as it should, you're not really going to see a physical payback from it. You'll see, you know, hopefully your serious injuries come down. You'll see, you know, near misses hopefully in that area come down. But in terms of a physical, something they can tangibly grasp hold of, you don't really see that with safety projects. So it's really, really important when you're doing presentations that are convincing to the management for getting health and safety projects approved, you know, that you really explain to them, you know, how much it's going to cost, what's the potential for not doing it. You know, if we start having issues because we haven't conducted the project, are we going to start having, you know, more OSHA, more HSE interactions, what happens if we have more accidents in that area? What's the worst case scenario? Say you have an acid plant that's in a bad state of repair, to such a degree where people that come in to keep upkeep in the plant won't come in anymore. Well, worst case scenario, if that plant fails, you're potentially going to have a big acid spill that could definitely accrue fines and things from the Environment Agency, the EPA, people like that. Or worst case scenario still, somebody has an accident, maybe that acid interacts with some of your employees. Worst case, that could lead to a fatality. Then there's potential then for accruing massive fines, and also potential for prison sentences for things like corporate manslaughter. So when you're trying to convince people through a presentation, it's important that you put all the information in there and you break all the information down. Some projects are very, very expensive. The best way I've found to get some of those projects approved is to break them down into small chunks. For example, I currently work for a corporate company, and they have a lot of sites. So, things like presenting to get a legal update service, it might be £100,000 project, but how much is that in real terms, in terms of, how much is that per site per year? How much is that in terms of, per business unit per year? So it's all about deciding what you're presenting, to what audience. You might need to taper that presentation to the audience, and making sure all that pertinent information is in your presentation. You want to make it engaging, you want to make it informative, and you also want to put in there, what would happen if you didn't follow the safety rules, you didn't agree to, health and safety project. What are the worst case scenarios? So people really understand the importance of the message that you're trying to get across. Next up is number 5, and that's to provide training. Again, training is a key fundamental thing we do as health and safety practitioners. But that training, again, has got to be at the right level. So we need to think about the audience. We need to think about, what are the important parts of that training to them? What is going to make that training specific to that audience? Again, you might have to taper training depending on whether it's training for management teams, supervisors, or potentially employees. So training's fundamental. Don't just do one training program to suit everybody. Make it specific to the audience you're trying to engage with in that, in that training environment. Next up, number 6, budgeting. So not all health and safety practitioners have a budget, but if you do have a budget, it's really, really important that you can budget well. What do we mean by that? Take a risk-based approach to what you're using your health and safety budget for. So concentrate on those things that are within your budget, but are at the higher end of your priority list. And if you do that, you should be able to keep good control of those budgets. Excuse me. If you need adjustments in health and safety budgets, it's always worth talking to the management. But again, coming back to convincing presentations, if you are hoping to increase the health and safety budget or amend it somewhat, it's really, really important that you put the right information there. You build a business case for it, and hopefully you'll be able to get those budgets increased. Number 7 then is knowledge of regulatory organisations. So here in the UK, we've got people like the Environment Agency, we have the Health and Safety Executive. In the States, you've got the EPA and OSHA. All right, so it's really important that whichever country you're operating in, you have knowledge of who those regulatory organisations are. All right, also have knowledge of what powers they've got. Here in the UK, if the HSE come to your site, they can come to your site, they can do a spot check, that they're able to just to come unannounced. It's not like that for all countries. So just be aware of who your country-specific regulatory organisations are, what powers they possess, and just make sure you keep on the right side of them. Number 8 then, how to pass inspections from these regulatory organisations. Okay, I don't really like the phrase how to pass inspections. It's not a tick box exercise. What I always say to the companies I work with is you should always be audit and inspection ready. The HSE, OSHA, the EPA, the Environment Agency, any of those organisations should be able to come to any of my sites, and I would hope that we are always inspection ready. It's difficult to maintain that, but I think if you have that as a management focus and a sort of a management message, it makes things a lot easier. They may well find bits and bobs wrong or opportunities for improvement. Don't see it as a negative. It can improve things like fees for intervention, where they have to write you a letter and tell you what you need to achieve and what timescales. Just see it as a gap analysis. Do you know what? Maybe we've dropped the ball here, but let's just take this, improve from it, and make sure we don't get caught with that again. Any sort of negative you can turn into a positive. We can either bury our head in the sands and go, oh my Lord, the world's ending, or we can say, thank you for highlighting that. Yeah, really appreciate your time. I will make sure that we get this squared away so that you're happy and we're not going to get caught with this again. That would be my advice to businesses. Don't see them as negative. If you do get a fee for intervention, fair enough. But see it as a gap analysis and an opportunity to improve. Number 9 then is gathering and interpreting data. Data is mega important, and the gathering of data is really, really important, especially when it comes to safety. Types of information that we do gather are things like accident stats, near miss stats. It's really good gathering this information, but you need to have the ability to interpret it. All right, it's okay to have all these nice spreadsheets and everything else detailing, what the quarter's accidents have been. But what you should be doing as a good health and safety professional is having a look at that. Quarter on quarter, are you seeing an increase in different types of incidents? Do you need to then, focus your attention on reducing those for the next quarter? And it's really about spotting those trends. Do you have a problem machine that's accruing quite a lot of near misses? Are you having a lot of finger injuries on a machine? That could point to a lack of guarding. So really it's about gathering that information, but not just holding it on a server somewhere, actually interpreting it and doing something with it. If we gather and interpret data well, we can fundamentally reduce near misses, which fundamentally reduces accidents. Okay, so gather that near miss data, gather that accident data, and do something with it. Spot trends. If there are trends, let's go back to that piece of equipment. Let's have a look. Have we guarded it enough? Is there anything? Do we need to bring in a machine specialist and have a look at how we can make it better for our workforce? Ultimately, as health and safety professionals, all we want to do is make sure our workforce and ourselves go back to our families of an evening. So let's make sure we gather that data, interpret the data, and then do something with that information. Finally, at number 10 is accountability. So there's never a truer word said than health and safety is everybody's responsibility. But when it comes to accountability, you as a health and safety manager, you as a health and safety administrator or coordinator or whatever you may be, have accountability for safety. Also, the managing director has the overall accountability of safety for that particular site or branch or whatever it might be. Okay, so both you and that managing director need to lead by example. Do not be the example. Good health and safety culture is built from a top-down perspective, okay? So you need to make sure you are whiter than white, toeing the line, adhering to all safety protocols and precautions. The same as the managing director and senior managers need to as well, okay? Because by leading by example, it shows employees that you take health and safety seriously, and it shows them the expectation. Okay, so be accountable for your own health and safety as well as that of those employees under your charge. And also, as the health and safety manager, consultant, administrator, coordinator, whatever you may be, if you see any deficiencies from senior managers, pull them up on it, because I can guarantee the day you do not pull the managing director or the finance manager or whoever it might be up for not wearing safety glasses or hearing protection and mandatory hearing protection and safety glasses zone or safety boots, the workforce are just going to lose all interest in anything you've got to say about health and safety rules. Be accountable for yourself and hold those that are not complying with health and safety rules and regulations on the site accountable as well. That is not just the shop floor people, that is senior managers, managing directors, finance people, HR managers. You need to make sure you hold everybody accountable for health and safety in equal measure. It does not matter if you're the managing director of the company or if you're the cleaner. You hold each of those people accountable to the same level. So that's it, folks, for my sort of top 10 qualities of a good health and safety professional. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If I've missed any out, if you've got any you'd add yourself, please highlight it in the comments below. Let me know what your top 10 qualities are. Also, let me know, maybe some of these you're not so good at. As a health and safety professional, I'll sit here and tell you, I'm not the best at budgeting, gathering, interpreting data, accountability. Sometimes, I forget, but I expect people to hold me accountable for when I forget to put my safety glasses over my eyes, for example. Okay, so these are just my top 10 qualities of a health and safety manager, but a lot of these, as you're progressing through your career, you pick up and get better and better at, okay? Us as individuals, us as human beings, we're not infallible and we don't know everything. As a health and safety professional, you are not expected to know everything to do with health and safety. It's massive, but you're expected to know the fundamentals, know where you can find the information, and also know when something just is not in your wheelhouse, and you'll get professionals in to do that. Okay, let me know if you found this video entertaining, if you found it good. If you're enjoying this video, please look at my other videos on Will on Safety. There'll be a Tuesday Toolbox Talk out tomorrow, which is part 2 to manual handling, so please check that out. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell on the channel. It helps me create more content. But that's it for now, guys. Thank you very much for taking the time to click on the video. I hope you found it informative. And remember, till next time, safe by choice, not by chance. Bye for now. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.